Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Cognizant Classic DFS Tactics show. We have a fun show for you, up to the minute forecast, up to the minute projected ownerships. So a lot of great information to finalize and optimize your DFS lineups for the Cognizant Classic. I'm excited. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into it, shall we? All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I post research weekly around or on the PGA Tour, generally around previous winners, patterns of previous winners, some course info. That comes out every Monday afternoon for the tournament of the week. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do for the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my betting cards and my top player usage for the week's tournament in DFS. That'll come out later on this evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see both of those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. And throughout the week, he updates you with his own form or version of recent form, course history. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able to join us every Wednesday after calls in the DFS Tactics show in his Substack chat, as he is gracious enough to host me over there, and we continue the DFS talk over there after the show. So you don't want to miss out on that. Subscribe to his article. It is free to do, by the way. And then lastly, we're live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. In addition to the poll question, which I do have typed up, remember to do that. So I want to hear from you all in that regard. I want to hear if of any players that you've wagered. Who are you focused on in DFS? Who are you pivoting to, fading away from? All that good stuff. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Cognizant Classic. And we're going to start, as we customarily do on a Wednesday evening, updating the Wind Finder forecast. Good evening, Tony. Good to see you in chat. We are going to try and find the optimal players to use this week, and would be interested to hear how your top 20 parlay came through. If you want to share that, who you put in there, what kind of odds did you get for that? But before I go into any of that and the Wind Finder forecast, I'm going to take a drink, and then we're going to talk about the poll question very quickly. So it seems that DraftKings, at least that's where I'm playing it over at DraftKings, has a new price structure, in the sense that last week at the Mexico Open, you had an overwhelming favorite in Tony Finau, which made sense to bring some of the prices down into the 5Ks. Well, they've done that again this week, and I don't know if I would consider Rory an overwhelming favorite. I mean, he is certainly the biggest name here, but there are some other big names here at this tournament. So I don't know if this is just a 2-week stretch, or if this is a new norm in terms of pricing. But with that in mind, because of the drastic gap that we have from premium priced or highest priced player to the bottom of the barrel, my question to the community, at least for this week, what is the lowest salary range you're considering playing this week? Are you not dropping into the 6Ks or 5Ks? Are you no scrubbing it at all? Are you in the upper 6s? Are you in the lower 6s? Or perhaps are you going into the 5Ks again this week and getting really greedy? So would be interested to hear the community or hear from the community in that regard. Please fill out that answer, and I'll certainly give my answer later on in the evening. Looking at the forecast, this has changed slightly from earlier on this evening, say 5 o'clock Eastern or so, when the last time I looked at it, there was a pretty significant advantage for the Thursday PM when I went when I stepped away from the computer earlier this evening. Now I don't see as much of a favor. Now, yes, you certainly can see that the lowest amount of wind in terms of velocity and gusts and whatnot is still Thursday morning, but it's not as pronounced as it was. I mean, the forecast earlier had closer into the low teens and mid-teens for gusts, kind of similar to Friday, as we'll see here in a second. It's kind of backed off of that, so now I do not see as much of a favor for the Thursday AM, Friday PM half of the draw. I will say there is the slightest of slight favors there, so I would use it in terms of a tiebreaker. Now, I have the luxury of being able to stay up late and check tomorrow early on, essentially right before tee off, to get the most up to the second forecast. I have that luxury. If you are able to do that, I would highly suggest you do the same. That way you have the most up to the second information. But if this is the last forecast that you are going to be able to have, I would give the slightest edge to the Thursday AM, Friday PM, because Friday looks pretty similar for the entirety of the day. Now, you can expect a little bit of an increase in wind throughout the day. That's generally what just happens, is that wind picks up throughout the day. But I don't see much of a change, I don't see any advantage on Friday at all for either half of the draw, and only the slightest of favors for the Thursday AM. Again, I'm not going to factor it in much at all. Maybe a tiebreaker scenario, but you could argue that there is a very slight advantage for the Thursday AM, Friday PM half of the draw. And if we look or zoom out and take a look at the weekend, Saturday looks like the wind dies down throughout the day, but again, as I mentioned, you kind of expect the wind to pick up throughout the day, and Sunday looks pretty solid. High of 80. Wind could pick up in the afternoon, but for our purposes, trying to maximize our lineups or optimize our lineups, I would give the slightest advantage to the Thursday AM half of the draw. Good evening, Jay. You're welcome. I do this for fun. I appreciate you tuning in, because there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of great content out there. I just appreciate that you in particular and everyone else that stops in and stops in chat and views and watches, takes time out of their day to listen to what I have to say. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. I'll own when I'm wrong. But thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. 5,900 Novak and Ryder is the lowest I have for my lineups. Yeah, like I said, I'll get into that, especially whenever we start making lineups and going through the price board. I really do like one of those two players, as you'll see later on this evening, Tony. All right, so there's a look at the forecast for the Cognizant Classic. Let's go ahead and move to Fantasy National, do a couple things here really quickly, and then get into the mixed condition model and then the meat and potatoes of the show, as they say. So you see, I've already got this set for the last 2 years. Because there is some wind in the forecast for Friday and Saturday, I've got the moderate and windy filter selected. In moderate and windy conditions, our top performers the past 2 years, or 36 rounds, whichever's come first: Rory, Corey Connors, Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ricky, Harry Hall, Justin Rose, Ben On, Sung Jae, and Carson Young is your top 10. Moving on down just a little bit, Chris Kirk, Andrew Novak, to your point there, Tony. 12th in wind performance the past couple of years, Adam Schenk, Kevin Yu, Shane Lowry, and on down, you can see about the top 25 to 30 or so top performers in the win the past couple of years. The other end of the spectrum, players who haven't played well: Robert Garrigus, Carl Yuan, Kevin Kisner, Ryan Brim, EVR, which is a little bit surprising. I mentioned this, I believe it was Monday, considering he generally plays pretty well in the wind, or at least traditionally has in his career, as we can see from here. So my guess is it's this moderate filter that's bringing him down, but that's where he is. He's falling in 138th. Matty Schmid, Tom Hoagie, Justin Lauer, Tyson Alexander, and so on down. They're your worst performers in moderate and windy conditions the past couple of years. The only other filter we're going to look at, just very, very quickly, difficult to par. I understand that the par 4 10th has been converted to a par 5, but PGA National is still a brute of a course. It is going to show its teeth, especially when the wind picks up. So, in rounds that have been difficult to par in the last couple of years, top players: Rory, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tom Kim, Denny McCarthy, Ricky, Justin Rose, Thomas Dietrich, Justin Suh, Sung Jae, and Shane Lowry. So if you have not finalized your lineups yet, I would give a pretty decent consideration or boost to these players that are in the top or upper portion of this rankings here in terms of total performance when it's difficult. The PGA National has traditionally been one of the hardest courses on the tour. It will play a little bit easier thanks to that aforementioned conversion of the par 4 10th, but I still think it's going to play pretty darn difficult. All right, with that, let's go ahead and move to the mixed condition model that I have made for this week of the Cognizant Classic. And I spent quite a bit of time on Monday talking through several metrics and perhaps some filters that I would be using and changing from last year's mixed condition model. So this is where I settled. I did end up putting 5% in off the tee, and I used the filter short courses, less than 7,200. Yes, PGA National is less than 7,200. It's not by much. It's going to be playing closer to about 7,150. But I chose this filter to try and simulate the forced layup nature that a lot of the holes here at PGA National have. It's not a perfect scenario, or it's not a perfect combination here, trying to simulate the forced layups with the course length. It's the best I can do off of Fantasy National. So 5% off the tee, and a lot of this came down to the fact that when we removed 5 years ago from the historical data collection, as I go back 5 years for each tournament, if you remove 5 years, or the 2019 Honda, the off the tee really did kind of rise in significance, and it's been gaining in importance the past 2 or 3 years. But I didn't want to go overboard with it because you see where I'm mostly focused. But this is a little bit of a change from where I was thinking I was going to be Monday night in that show. So I do have 5% off the tee on short courses, 20% strokes gain approach. We saw all week, Sunday, Monday, how approach is just the most important factor here around PGA National. There's water everywhere. Not to mention there's water off the tee, but a lot of these holes are protected by water approaching the green. These greens are big. They're not easy to hit. So iron play is paramount here around PGA National. 20% in strokes gain approach. This might be a little bit heavy, but I did end up going 10% in putting on, and you see the filter multiple courses. This filter is the Tiff Eagle Bermuda courses. So again, just a quick reminder on what those courses are. Bay Hill, where we'll be next week for the Arnold Palmer, Kapalua, Century, PGA National, of course. The Port Royal has Tiff Eagle Bermuda greens, but we don't get putting data from there because that is a non-continental U.S. tournament. It's the host of the Bermuda Championship in the fall. And then lastly, Sea Island, the host of the RSM. So those courses is what is making up this data set. So I put 10% strokes gained putting on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. I think that might be a little bit heavy, if anything. I could understand if you want to take that down to 5%. But I just settled on 10% there. And then you'll see from the fairways and greens page view in Fantasy National, I was kind of all over the place. And I admitted this Friday, gosh dang it. I admitted this Monday that I didn't know where I was going to be going in this page view. I have 5% in good drives gained when it's difficult to par. I have 5% in greens when it's difficult to par. I have 5% sand saves and 5% scrambling when it's difficult to par. So let's cover these two first. This is what I was talking about mostly on Monday evening, good drives and greens. Good drive defined in Fantasy National terms is a drive that hits the fairway or the player is still hitting the green in regulation, even if they miss the fairway. So 5% when it's difficult to par should be fairly self-explanatory, especially since accuracy is such a premium here. 5% in greens. These greens, even though they're large, are not easy to hit. And hitting greens in regulation, especially when a course is difficult, generally going to rise or help you rise among the leaderboard just in general. Let's talk about these two. Sand saves. This is a pure... I procured this metric from Gabe. That's the nicest way of saying I just copied him and stole it. But he made a very good point in his article at the beginning of the week that said, with all the water on the course, professionals are just trained to bail out away from the water, and most of those places at PGA National, that puts you in the sand. So I did not want to use a filter, sand saves difficult or sand saves even on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. I just wanted to see who was good with their sand saves or their sand play. That could be a decent little factor. We didn't talk about it really at all throughout this week. I slightly mentioned it at the end of the show Monday, but all the credit to Gabe on this one from his article that comes out every Sunday. So 5% in sand saves. And then lastly, in terms of the fairways and greens, I do think scrambling is going to be a decent factor. And because I have sand saves and scrambling, that's why you'll notice that I don't have anything around the green specific, like strokes gained around the green. I have scrambling, but I'm using these, again, using the difficult relative to par filter. I think the course is going to play difficult, and even though it was such a bad performing metric last year, I'm going to go on the basis that last year was a bit of an outlier or a bit fluky. If it's not, this will be an incorrect metric and filter combination to use. But I don't want to use scrambling or around the green in here, or I should say scrambling with the green surface or around the green as the metric, because with all the water in play and off the tee on some of these holes, scrambling could come into play right from the start of your hole. So I just feel like scrambling is going to be important. I admit that I was really torn on what filter to use with it. I settled on the difficult to par. This is the last 5% of the mixed condition model where I was not as confident. Good MVP, I saw you there, but I didn't want to lose my train of thought. Again, safe travels to Florida if you haven't already. Play well down there. And hopefully you have great success with any lineups that you play this week for the Cognizant Classic. But enjoy your time down there in Florida. I mentioned this Monday night that I was surprised at how correlating the birdies gained were here at PGA National. Now, obviously, the more important one is the bogey avoidance, and I'm always going to try, when applicable, to match a scoring metric with a scoring filter, difficult to par, easy to par, all that. So 10% bogey avoidance, but I do have 5% in birdies gained when rounds are difficult. So I settled on adding that to the mixed condition model this week. And then to finalize what we have here, 10% in the par 3s. I've talked all week how par 3s are just going to be a big factor. They generally are here at PGA National. I do have 5% in the specific length of par 3s that play most important. We saw that roughly 60 to 65% of the strokes gained total in par 3s come to this range. Oh gosh, that was not what I wanted, you moron. 5%, 10%. That's not what I wanted at all. Oh well. Fortunately, I've already got this saved, but 5% in this range. 60 to 65% of your strokes gained total come into this range. So that's why we're looking at 175 to 200s by themselves as well. Only 5% in par 4s, and again, this is where I might be a little light. You could argue to go 10% in par 4s and 5% in the putting and drop this down a little bit. But remember, with that conversion of the 10th, I do think par 4s are going to lose their importance a little bit since you are losing a par 4 here. So I'm hedging a little bit with that. And then finally, we saw 90% of the strokes gained total in par 5s at PGA National come to this range. So we're just going to look at that range of par 5s. There's a look at the mixed condition model. Hopefully I've given you some areas where I think I could be weak. Of course, no around the green. I explained why I don't have any around the green using these metrics here. I could be a little bit too heavy on putting. If a specific range of par 4 matters, I could be weak. But overall, I felt pretty good about this, except again, when I got to about that last 5 to 10% or so, I wasn't the most confident with what filter to use on scrambling. I know scrambling is going to be a big factor. I wasn't confident which filter to use. So yeah, there's a look at the mixed condition model that I have this week for the Cognizant Classic. With that, let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings for this week. And I will preface all this by saying that my rankings, again, are based on 3 criteria. So this will be a reminder if you're a returning viewer, or for your information if you're a new viewer. My rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a straight numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model we just talked about with the metrics, the percentages that we have in there. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course in the past 5 years. The lower the number, the better. Hence, Eric Cole's got a very low number since he's only played it once and finished second. And of course, we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options, so projected ownership also factors in to my rankings. And this is projected ownership per Fantasy National. Gabe, again, was kind enough to send over his sources information for projected ownership, so I have that off to the side over here as well. But my rankings for the Cognizant Classic go as such. I have Eric Cole, number 1. He's one of the most popular players this week, if not the most popular in DFS. But everything lines up well. I mean, look, he was number 1 in the analytics. He was number 1 per course history. Everything just seems to line up pretty well for Eric Cole. Number 2, Shane Lowry. Number 3, Sam Ryder. Brendan Todd, 4th. Chris Kirk rounds out my top 5. Rory, Hoagie, Lucas Glover, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Justin Rose round out my top 10. So let's talk about the big shock. At least it might be a shock to see a $5,900 priced player, not only in the top of my rankings, but third. Todd the Godfather, yeah. Also interesting. Brendan Todd's getting helped quite a bit by, or both of these players are getting helped, quite a bit by their perceived unique ownership. But let's talk about Sam Ryder. I mean, he did rate out 7th in the analytics. Number two in strokes gained approach. And we've talked all week how important approach is here at PGA National. Top 20 in putting on TIFF Eagle Bermuda. He has a couple of bad statistics. Just a couple. Off the tee, on short courses. And I don't think that's going to hurt him as much since he's going to have to take 3 woods and irons off a lot of these tees. So I don't think this is going to be as much of an issue as the ranking might say. You see he completely devours this length of par 5s. Now the sand saves are an issue, yes. The 175 to 200 par 3s could be an issue, but everything else is pretty darn solid, especially that number 2 in approach. So I'm going to be using a lot of Sam Ryder. That's kind of the mad scientist play this week, foreshadowing. Brendan Todd, also kind of surprising for me because he has not necessarily played the Honda well, but this is a very volatile course with all the water in play. So the course value or their previous history here was given less weight than it normally is since, again, this is a volatile course. So a lot of things going well for Brendan Todd. Again, a good putter on this surface. I might be a little bit too heavy in the putting, but they're certainly rising because of that. Top 5 in bogey avoidance when it's difficult, and that helps with the putter helps with that, absolutely. But he is a grinder. He will grind out his pars, just like Sam Ryder. He's not very good off the tee. That's not his game, but he's generally pretty accurate. So I don't have too much of a concern with that. You see that here, the good drives gain. He's either hitting the fairways or he's not so wayward that he can't hit the green. It's just a lot of lack of distance, really. So I'm not too worried about this, just like I'm not really with Sam Ryder. 3rd in good drives gained. 8th in sand saves. A lot of that helps with the putter as well. 2nd in scrambling. Lots of like with the Todd father this week. Chris Kirk, your defending champion, makes a lot of sense as well. Now, Rory and Fitzpatrick are getting hurt quite a bit because of this number here. It looks blank because they haven't played it in the past 5 years. I do have to give an arbitrarily high number in here because we don't know for a fact that they're going to like this course in the recency. Now, yes, Fitzpatrick's played it, a couple times way back in 2016, 2017, but he's a completely different player now than he was then. And that's why I only go back 5 years. But they're getting hurt with that. Rory's only projected at 13.5 per Fantasy National. That's not quite the case per Gabe's source. Fitzpatrick's at 6%, and he's actually not too much higher per Gabe's source, so I like that. And then Justin Rose has been really bad at the Honda the past 5 years, but rated out to 5th per the metrics, so something to think about. But anyway, there's a look at my rankings. Enough of that. Let's go ahead and sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants are going in these various price ranges. Gosh dang it. Where they're going in these various price ranges and who we may want to pivot to or fade away from to gain some leverage on them. All right. So in the 5Ks or in the 10Ks or 5 digits, we have 5 players. Rory at 12.2, Cam Young at 10.7, Fitzpatrick at 10.6, Henley at 10.2, Tom Kim at 10.1. You see most of these players rating out pretty darn well for me. Don't party too hard out in Florida. Most of these players playing are rating out fairly well. Cam Young played, decently well here once, but I've got issue. I got concerns. He's not a good putter, especially on Tiff Eagle. The irons have been shaky at best, is what I'll say. He's got plenty going for him. Like he's better at bogey avoidance than you might think. Of course, off the tee, that's kind of his game. But I kind of have to agree with the numbers here. I'm going to make him pretty easy fifth. Rory, depends on what projected ownership or what source you want to go by. Fantasy National has Rory at 13.5%, or the members at Fantasy National have him at 13.5%. Per Gabe source, it's 35.5%, and I have to believe he's going to be much closer to that 35%. I actually don't know if he's going to be 35%. I would think of Tony Finau from last week. I would think 30% in that range, but it's going to be a lot, would be my guess. And you've got reason to be concerned. The putter, not great on this surface. And he actually doesn't take advantage of the short par fives as much as you would like from an elite player, especially one with the distance that he has. Now, he is the number one birdie getter, especially when it's difficult. He's the number one par 4 player, so if they do end up playing more important than what I have given here, then that could be something. But he does have a couple of really, really eyesore statistics, so that's why I'm going to make Matt Fitzpatrick number one. He is 6% here at Fantasy National, 10.5 per Gabe source, by far the most unique in the 10Ks. Because the next would be Tom Kim. Tom Kim's at closer to 14% per Gabe source. So both places, whether it's Fantasy National or per Gabe source, Fitzpatrick is 4% less than Tom Kim. And I was looking at this a little bit earlier today. This did not feel like a really good Tom Kim fit. You think about his wins. The Shriners and the Wyndham. Yes, they're short, but they're easy. This is not easy. Having said that, when I looked at Tom Kim, he actually plays really, really well in the wind. And he's actually played fairly well on difficult courses. He just hasn't won them. You see the putter. It's probably a little bit better than what you would think. Because, again, the Wyndham is on Bermuda, just not Tiff Eagle Bermuda. Good with the irons. Good scrambler. Good bogey avoider. He devours the short par 4. So the more I thought about Tom Kim, the more I understood why people were gravitating towards him. But I'm still going to make Matt Fitzpatrick number one. A lot of it has to do with the fact that his ownership is so much lower than everybody else in the 10Ks. The irons are fine. I'm not worried about the irons. Number one bogey avoider. I still think PGA National is going to be tough. Top 10 on this surface. Look at everybody else in the 10K. Look at everybody else in the 10K and look at their atrocious performance on this surface. Then you have Matt Fitzpatrick, who is elite on this surface. Love Matt Fitzpatrick this week. He will have to absolutely be better on the short par 5s. No doubt about that. But everything else is good to great to even elite. Off the tee is fine. Good drives gained is good. Decent maybe. Top 15 greens. Top 15 sand saves. Top 5 in scrambling when it's difficult. Top 5 in birdies gained when it's difficult. Top 15 at the specifically at the par 3s. I love Matt Fitzpatrick. Going to be extremely overweight on Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to have more than 10% Matt Fitzpatrick in my lineups. If he does not play well, I will lose. I don't think there's anything wrong with Rory, but at 30 to 35%, which would be my guess, you've got enough reason to fade him. Henley's going to be fine. He's just a good play. He's going to be chalky. 16% per Gabe source, 17% here at Fantasy National. Again, the putter's bad, but you see the performance at the Honda. It's been great. Good irons. Accurate player. Off the tee on short courses. Just accurate. Good drives gained. Henley's fine. He's just chalky. He's fine. It's some chalk I'll eat, but I'm going almost all in on Fitzpatrick. So in the 10Ks, obviously Fitzpatrick's my number one player. I'll probably go Henley second to save some money. Again, the pricing is going to help with that. I'll go Rory third, only because I'm still going to stick to my gut feeling that this just doesn't feel like a great Tom Kim fit. And I could be wrong with that. But I'm just going to stick to my gut feeling there. And Cameron Young's close to a full fade. I don't want much of Cam Young, even though he has played well here. So here's a look at the 10Ks. Let's go to the 9s. I'm not going to go through everybody here, but Eric Cole, number 1 player in my rankings. I don't care if I will care if he's 30 to 35% owned. You have to expect he's probably going to be around 20 to 25% would be my guess. I'm going to use him. This is chalk I'll eat. I'm going to use my number 1 player in my rankings. 3rd in irons. 2nd on this surface. Top 10 in bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Now, the issue with Eric Cole has been his off the tee game. And that could be an issue here, but it didn't prevent him from contending last year. So, I will defer to the one solid year that he's had. And I just don't know how much off the tee is really going to play a factor. That's why it's only at 5%. So I'm going to use a lot of Eric Cole. Kind of like Tom Kim, this just didn't feel like a great JT Poston fit. He loves short courses, which is what PGA National is, but he generally likes it when it's easier. Having said that, he doesn't have any bad statistics except for one. All of his statistics are green, except for one, and that's the birdies gained when it's difficult. He's more of a bogey avoider, as you can see, when it's difficult, as opposed to going low. Poston's okay, I suppose. 15% per Gabe source, 13.5 here. It's going to be, pretty popular, but a play I don't hate. I would just even at 5 to 10% more ownership, I would just rather play Eric Cole because I'm just confident in Eric Cole. I mentioned last week how when you start getting Sungjae into these low ownerships, it might be time to start thinking about Sungjae again. I think we're getting close to that point. 8% per Fantasy National, 9.5 per Gabe Source. Sungjae's a former champion here. Really likes the Honda. Now the Cognizant. He's way too talented of an iron or player in general for the irons to be this bad. He really putts this surface well. You see the off the tee prowess on short courses and sand saves. 3rd in sand saves. All of the bailouts in this on this course are in the sand. He's a premier sand player. I really like Sungjae. This is the second of 3 or 4, players that I'm going to be extremely overweight on. If they don't play well, I will lose. I think we're getting to a point where you need to start actively rostering Sungjae because you're going to be gaining a whole lot on your fellow contestants. Again, 8% per Fantasy National, 9.5 per Gabe Source. I like Sungjae a lot. Minwoo, I like the player. This does not feel like a good fit for Minwoo Lee. The irons are better than this, but he's more known as his off the tee game for his off the tee game, particularly his driver. Driver's mitigated here, so I've got concerns with Minwoo Lee. I like the player. I don't think this is a good fit. I also don't see Ben On the fit with Ben On. I mean, I understand he's played it well in the past, but the irons are shaky. Par 3s are bad, and you got to play the par 3s well here. And again, the good combination of good drives, whether that is the iron play lacking or he can get a little bit wayward. I got some concerns with Ben On. So this is going to be a full fade. This is where I'm planting my flat. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to full fade Ben On. And if I lose, I lose. But you can't play everybody. I mentioned how I'm really high on Sungjae and I'm going to use Eric Cole. We'll talk about Lowry here in a second. Can't play everybody. I'm going to full fade Ben On. And if he does play well, I will lose. Chris Kirk's fine. It's surprising to see how much people are not talking about the defending champion of the tournament. Top 5 in irons, top 10 in putting on this surface. I don't want to call last year a fluke. He's a good player. Man. 13% per Fantasy National, only 10% per game source. I think you'd be fine rostering some Chris Kirk. That's somebody you might want to think about, especially if you want to get off the Ben on, or perhaps get off the Eric Cole chalk. I wouldn't suggest to get off the Shane Lowry chalk, as I'll talk about here in a second, but, for 100 more, you're going to gain quite a bit of ownership uniqueness going from Lowry to Kirk. Going to use a lot of Lowry. 16.5 here at Fantasy National, 11 per game source. I love Lowry this week. We're going to see him, or you're going to see him on social media later tonight around the betting cards and the the top player usage. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you are ready for the Cognizant this week. Jumping in here in the 9Ks, where we are talking about Shane Lowry. He has one bad statistic. It's the length of the par threes. Hasn't prevented him from playing extremely well here the past 5 years. Lots of deep green or good statistics. Love Shane Lowry this week. Berger really likes this course. He's getting a little bit of attention. I am still wanting to see continued signs of health. Because I play multiple lineups, I'm willing to take the chance on rostering Daniel Berger once or twice, just because he loves this place so much. But you see 63rd in the rankings the straight analytical rankings. I would be a little bit cautious on Berger. I'm going to absolutely be lighter on Berger than the rest of the community or our fellow contestants. I'll be using him once or twice, but I still am cautious because of coming back from injury. Do not want any part of Corey Connors. You see how terrible he has been here at the Honda. He is atrocious on these greens. He's not a good putter in general, but he is atrocious on these greens. Doesn't take advantage of par threes or par fives. He is the number one off the tee player on short courses, sure. He's generally accurate, but if he has anywhere near an off week in irons, if he's field average in irons, he's going to struggle because his sand play is awful. If we had a strokes gain around the green in here, it would be awful. I don't want any part of Connors. I'm actually fully out on Connors. 17.5% per game source. That's another reason why I don't want any part of it. So him and who's the other one? Oh, Ben On. So these two in the 9Ks, if they play well, I'll lose. But I'm at other places in here. So I just don't want any part of those two. Mitchell's fine, former champion. You would think this is a good fit for him, but the form is pretty bad. So go with what you want on that. It's okay. I don't hate it, but I'm not in love with it either. Just kind of lukewarm with it. Moving into the 8s, we had some discussion about Denny McCarthy on Monday. Again, I don't hate it. The irons are getting better, but they're still a struggle, and you gotta be really dialed with your irons. Now, Denny McCarthy is an all-world putter. This is actually not one of his favorite surfaces, so take that or keep that in mind. But he is still a short game extraordinaire, and which is going to really play out well at PGA National. Like Corey Connors, he doesn't take advantage of the par threes and the par fives all that well. He's a little better than Connors is. Not by much. Number 1 scrambler. Actually, surprising, he's number 20, or top 20 in birdies gained when it's difficult. Again, probably all around that putting. At 6.3% per Fantasy National, 7.5 per Game Source. If you want to use him as a one-off, I don't hate it. McCarthy is somebody I would be more interested in outrights as opposed to DFS this week. Because I don't see him being a middling performer. I think he's going to be contending or top 20-ish, high up on the leaderboard, or he's going to miss the cut. I don't see him being a middling performer. So he's somebody I would target in outrights as opposed to DFS. Jaeger's fine, playing well right now. He's been okay at previous Hondas. Jaeger, 12.5 per Game Source, 14 per Fantasy National. So I mean, he's not unique. It's okay. It's fine. Kind of like Keith Mitchell. If he fits, great. If not, I don't have to use him. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, I do like Sepp Straka quite a bit. Winner 2 years ago. Loves putting on this surface. I think this is a little bit misleading. He's generally a pretty good bogey avoider. Pretty good grinder, I would think. I think of Sepp Straka as a pretty good grinder. Irons are okay. Really, really takes advantage of these short par 5s, which is what you want to look at. And he's not going to get himself into trouble, generally. Good drives gained. Greens when it's difficult. So, 11.5 per Fantasy National. 11.5 per Game Source. So, I'll use some Sepp Straka. Probably be a little bit overweight. I'll probably have a little bit more than 11.5% on it. Bottom of the 8Ks. Keep in mind, this is Rasmus Højgaard, not Nikolai. So, Rasmus is a very talented player as well. But I just don't have a good gauge on where, how his game's going to translate over here yet. Hostler's getting some attention. He is the number 1 putter on this surface. Noren, not really. You look at Noren, he's got a lot of red. So does Hostler, to be fair. So does Hostler. But the putter's going to save Hostler, I think. Whereas Noren, I kind of look at on bent. Right or wrong, I kind of look at Noren on bent. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just not really... I'm not really much of any of these players, really. Jake Knapp, great story. I think he's going to have the winner's hangover. Could be wrong, but I think he's just going to have the winner's hangover. Justin Rose is going to be an interesting decision for me. He's not played well here in the last 5 years, but rated out 5th by the pure numbers, and is extremely unique. 6.5 at both places. So let's figure it out here. Approach, good to decent. Decent putter on Tiff Eagle. Grinder, supposedly. You off the tee is his weakest. Okay. Decent with these short par 5s. Par 3s are okay. I don't know. What do you all think on Justin Rose? I mean, 10th in my rankings. 5th by the numbers. Very unique. But he's just been really bad at the Honda whenever he's played it in the past 5 years. So, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Justin Rose. Everything analytically is saying to use him. So I'm sure I'll have him. Was on the course early, tweeting every 2 seconds. Definite fade. I mean, I won't fade a guy just for doing that, but I've got other reasons to fade him. We talked about that in the 9Ks. There's a couple of 9Ks I'm just not playing, and he's one of them. Because I like several players in the 9s. I would be interested to hear what you all think on Justin Rose. I'm non-committal on him. I don't know how I feel about him. Moving into the upper sevens, Hoagie getting a lot of attention, probably for the accuracy narrative. And he's actually been a pretty good putter on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. I don't hate it. 12% here. 10% per game source. Okay. Just understand he's just not been good at the Honda in years past. And that putter can go cold quickly. But I'll have some Tom Hoagie, I'm sure. Third in the rankings. Again, he's just been bad. Kind of like Justin Rose. But Justin Rose to me is more intriguing because of the half ownership that Hoagie is. Pendrith, boy. Pendrith, I really wanted to like last week at Mexico. It felt like it was a good course for him. Then I thought about it, and he really kind of struggles on long courses. This actually might be a place to look at Taylor Pendrith, surprisingly. I know it doesn't scream like a good fit for Taylor Pendrith, but he generally plays shorter courses better than longer ones. The putter's not great on this surface, but pretty good bogey avoider when it's difficult. Irons are still fine. Off the tee is mitigated here, but it's okay. I don't know. Pendrith might be a useful one-off in your lineups. I don't want any part of Svensson either. He's the third of the three players that I'm going to fade. There's too much going wrong with Svensson. I understand that irons are great right now, but bad on this surface. Even though he won at the RSM, he's still been bad on this surface. And I generally look at Svensson when it's easier. This is not easy. So look at all these things when it's difficult. 88th bogey avoidance when it's difficult. 127th good drives. 142nd in greens. We talked about Brendan Todd in the reveal of the top 10. He's going to be unique, that's for sure. So probably should like him a little bit more, but I don't know if I would put him fourth in my rankings. Moving into the mid-sevens, look, Bezadenhout's getting a lot of love. This doesn't feel like a great Bezadenhout course. Kind of like Tom Kim, this doesn't feel like a great Bezadenhout course. I just looked at the time, and I'm coughing my head off, and we still have lineups to make, so I'm going to kind of go through the rest of the 7s, 6s, and 5s quickly. But feel free to jump in chat if you have a question about a specific player. But I am going to try to speed this up a little bit since we still have lineups to make. I'm sure I'll have Bezadenhout, but I'm not nearly as high on him as this 13.5% here. I don't trust the off the tee enough to keep himself in play, basically. Hubbard, okay, but he really fell apart on the weekend in Mexico. I talked about his lack of off the tee prowess, so he's also not the best when it's difficult. You see scrambling, birdies gained, good drives gained, just pretty bad when it's difficult. So I don't see this as a good fit for Hubbard, even though he's played it a couple times and fairly well. Elsewhere in the low sevens, Shank rated out well because I have the good, the accuracy, the good drives gained, the greens, scrambling and stuff that he's generally pretty good at. Okay, I'll use some Adam Shank, I guess. I do worry about his par 3 performance because you do have to play those well here. But I don't hate Shank a little bit. Lucas Glover is getting the most love. Well, I can't say that. He's at 6.5 per Gabe Source, 10% Fantasy National. The number one iron player in the past 36 rounds. Now, some of this might be going back towards the playoffs, FedEx playoffs from last year when he was just on fire. But that putter is a little bit better than what this is still showing, thanks to the broomstick. So I'm sure I'll have some exposure to Lucas Glover, but I'll try to limit it because I do kind of like Shank. But I'm just not in this area of the price board much. Tells you the kind of lineups I'm probably building. Moving into the sixes. Sorry. Do not forget Billy Horschel. It's Bermuda Billy, after all. And he has played the Honda very, very well in the past. It's Bermuda Billy. Don't ignore him. He's not in great form, but don't be surprised if he ends up top 25ing. It is Bermuda Billy. All right, moving into the sixes. Couple of names to give you. He's not going to be unique by any means. Sitting at roughly 7% or so per game source, 11.5 per Fantasy National. Carson Young, I really, really like. Number one par 3 performer, and we've talked, all week and tonight how important I think those are. He does have to be better at the par 5s. He's going to have to be better at the scrambling portions and the difficult. But you're playing him for the par 3s, good irons, good putter on the surface. I do like some Carson Young. Elsewhere in the 6Ks, not a whole lot really that I'm really, really excited about. I know Gary Woodland rated out really, really well. I'm just not there. He's burned me enough already that I'm hesitant. Top 15 in irons and supposedly top 15 on this surface, but I don't know. I think that's a little bit misleading. He has not been good at the par 5s. Sand saves has not been good. Scrambling has not been good. I'm just not as high on Gary Woodland as it might seem. So really, it's kind of Carson Young in the upper 6s. Moving into the lower 6s. Ugh. Not much here, I don't think. If you can stomach the bad putter, you might want to take a look at Alex Smalley just because he's such a grinder. He hits plenty of greens. It's just that putter's really, really bad. So, I'm not in love with it by any means, but it's something to think about. If I'm going down here, I'm just going to go to Sam Ryder. 9% per Fantasy National and 4% per game source. Like, even if he ends up being in the 7 to 8%, like, number 3 in my rankings, number 2 iron player, top 20 in putting. I just give me all the Sam Ryder I can get. It's probably telling you the types of lineups I'm building if I'm not in the low 7s. Or the mid 7s, really. And not only that, he's top 10, almost top 5 on these shorter par 5s, which is very prevalent here at PGA National. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with the price board, where our fellow contestants are, where I think some good pivots are, who the best choices to fade. Let's start making some lineups. We'll start with tiers contests for those who play tiers contests, and then we'll jump into Classic and the Big GBP. So, for those who play tiers contests, Tier 1, Rory, Cam Young, Matt Fitzpatrick. To me, it's a pretty clear Matt Fitzpatrick for 2 reasons. One, he's going to be extremely more unique than Rory in a tiers contest. And 2, I just don't think Cameron Young's... I'm just fading Cameron Young. So for me, it's just kind of the choice between Fitz and Rory. I'll take the uniqueness off of Fitz. The elite putter on this surface. Number 1 bogey avoider when it's difficult. Just give me all the Fitz I can get. Fitzpatrick in Tier 1. Tier 2, Hindley, Tom Kim, Eric Cole, Poston, and Minwoo Lee. Well, just because, I took Fitzpatrick. I got a lot of uniqueness out of it, so it allows me to take Eric Cole, my number 1 player. I don't think Russell Hindley's a bad choice either. But if I'm going to take chalk, might as well take the chalk that is number 1 in my ranking. So give me Eric Cole in Tier 2. I do think Hindley's a fine choice. Tier 3, Sungjae, Ben An, Chris Kirk, Shane Lowry, Corey Connors. This is tough. I do like Lowry a lot. I really like Sungjae, and I think Sungjae is going to be underrepresented. But give me Shane Lowry, number 2 player in my rankings. He just loves playing the Honda or PGA National. Again, don't overlook Sungjae and don't overlook Chris Kurt either. But I'll go Lowry, then Sungjae, then Ben On in Tier 3. Tier 4, Daniel Berger, Keith Mitchell, Denny McCarthy, Yeager, Pavone, Straka, and Jake Knapp. For me, it's pretty clear. I'll take Sepp Straka. Not particularly close with anybody else here. Again, Berger, I want to see some health. He still, to me, has that injury withdrawal risk. Mitchell, McCarthy, okay. Pavone could be interesting if you think he's going to be unique, but just give me Sepp Straka. Tier 5, we have Rasmus, Bo Hostler, Noren, List, Rose, Hoagie, and Pendrith. Ooh. If you're comfortable just taking a pure wild card, Rasmus Højgaard's I don't want List. It might be Rose, just for the uniqueness. Hostler makes, I guess, some sense, I suppose. Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling in Tier 5. So I guess I'll go Rose. It's pretty close between Rose and Hoagie for me. Pendrith also, if you want to be real contrarian, take Taylor Pendrith, because a lot of people are going to be off of him after his miscut last week. But I do think Rose is probably the best choice here. Pendrith is contrarian. Now I'm starting to talk myself into Pendrith. Let's see. What else did I go? I went Straka, who's probably going to be pretty chalky. Tier 3, I went Lowry was chalky. Yeah, you know what? Let's try Pendrith. I'll try Taylor Pendrith in Tier 5. It's pretty close. Again, Højgaard's the pure wild card. I'm between these 3. If you have a strong feeling on any of them, take them. I'll go with Pendrith, just because I think he's going to be ultra unique. Tier 6, Batia. Oh, crap. You need to scroll over. Batia, Thompson, Suh, Hadley, Carson Young, Brandon Wu, and Valimaki. For me, it's just Carson Young. He's going to be chalky in this tier, but that's why we went Pendrith and we went Fitzpatrick to take some of the chalk in the other tiers. So I'll take Carson Young. So this tier's construction goes Matt Fitzpatrick, Eric Cole, Shane Lowry in Tier 3. Tier 4 is Sepp Straka. Tier 5 is Taylor Pendrith. Tier 6, we take Carson Young. All right, let's move on to classic lineups, see what kind of lineups our fellow contestants are building and how we can maneuver around them and gain some leverage and really rise in our big GPPs. So the first question you got to ask, or anyone's asking, I imagine, is are you playing Rory or not? So we're going to start this lineup with Rory, and then we'll go to a lineup that doesn't. So if our fellow contestants are playing Rory, we got to see where they're going to bottom out. I'm trying not to go down into the 5s, but they're probably going to have to go into the 6s. Members of Fantasy National, if they are going down into the 6s, Dietrich is at 9%, Batia is at 9%, Davis Thompson's at 8.5%. Now Carson Young's the most per Fantasy National. Let's see. I imagine Thomas Dietrich might be getting some attention from our fellow contestants. So we're going to try to bottom him out at Thomas Dietrich. Doug Gim's getting a lot of attention as well. So they could very well bottom out Doug Gim. Let's see. The next would be Bezuidenhout and Svensson. That's going to be pretty high in price. So with that being the case, they might actually do a Doug Gim here. That would allow them to go Adam Svensson at 77, Hoagie at 79, 10% per game source, 11.5 or so here. which then leaves them 83. Bo Hostler getting quite a bit of attention. I was trying to make this chalky, but some of these are way off in terms of, like, Bo Hostler's 7% per Fantasy National. He's 12.5 per Gabe Source. Hoagie's at 11.7 here, 10% per Fantasy National, or per Gabe Source. Vincent's going to be really chalky. Gim's getting a lot of attention. Now, Dietrich is pretty off as well. Like, if we wanted to just go straight off of Fantasy Nationals ownerships, we could go Carson Young, then Doug Gim, Svensson, Hoagie getting a lot of attention to the 85. Højgaard. Let's see if we can't get them up to maybe a Jaeger. No, that may be too much. Sepp Straka, maybe? 100 off. Yeah, we'll just have to drop off of him. What do you want to know about, Tony, on the parlays? Shout yours out or what? There's probably a chalky kind of shell to a Rory lineup. You go Rory, then drop it down into the 8s for maybe a Jaeger or a Sepp Straka. Probably won't be able to do another 8 depending on how far down they're willing to go in the price. Carson Young or Thomas Dietrich. You have Doug Gim, Bazay Newt Svensson. Those are the kind of lineups that are getting built with Rory, I would think. Good evening. P, thanks again for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Again, safe travels. Have fun down in Florida. Can't wait to hear about it next week. Hopefully you'll be back and to share some of those stories. But thanks again, P. Have a good one. Good luck this weekend. Top 20, Eric Cole, Jaeger, Henley, Lowry, McCarthy, Pavone, Pendrith, Hubbard. Kirk, Hodges, Berger, Strike. So you're looking at odds there with those? Yeah. Okay. Let me finish these lineups here, and we can look at that as a community. But there's what I would think is a chalky looking shell of a lineup with Rory. Then we go, if we're not going to use Rory, again, per Fantasy National, the guy messed up. No big deal. I can somewhat see what we're looking at there. All right, so Henley been on, getting a lot of attention as well. So if our fellow contestants aren't going Rory, they're gonna start probably around Henley or Tom Kim. This very well could be Eric Cole. Been on, getting a whole lot of attention as well. Shane Lowry, Corey Connors. We're gonna try to not go into the 6Ks since they're not having to go, or since they're not using Rory. Again, Doug Gim is the most common low 7, 11% per Gabe Source, 11.5 here at Fantasy National. Let's see. Elsewhere in the low 7s, like, you don't really have too much else. Like Lucas Glover at 10% per Fantasy National, but per Gabe Source only 6.5. So, Hubbard, Bazay Newt's getting a lot. You'd also have Svensson, who's really, really popular. Then 8,000 is Rose, who's not. Be Tom Hoagie. Again, I try to use different players, but it seems like Fantasy National is kind of gravitating towards the same guys in this bottom part of the price, or actually technically the middle price of the price board. These 7Ks, they're really kind of looking at the same guys. Svensson, Bazadenhout, maybe a little bit of Hubbard, Doug Gim in the low 7s. So there's a look at a couple of chalkier lineups, I think. So how are we going to combat this? Well, I've been building mostly Fitzpatrick lineups to get off of Rory. If you wanted to use Rory, I think you're well within your ability to, because at 5,900, yeah, he might be a little bit more popular than you would like, but Sam Ryder really, really rates out well. Really like Sam Ryder. If you were ultra greedy, you could do a 5 and a 6. You know, perhaps you're high on Sammy Valimaki again this week, who I don't hate. Carson Young, probably going to be a little bit too chalky to combine with Sam Ryder. 7K, again, don't ignore Billy Horschel. Bermuda Billy. Glover could be interesting. Adam Schenk, 7,200. Could absolutely work with this. And now you have an average of 8,200 per player here. You don't even have to. You can go into the upper sevens. Brendan Todd, Taylor Pendrith, who's he's a little bit more speculative for sure. I don't know how the chat feels about Justin Rose. Maybe you like a Tom Hoagie quite a bit. Let's do Brendan Todd. Why not? Brendan Todd, and then 8,500 per player. Maybe you have Bo Hostler. I like Sepp Straka quite a bit. Justin Rose. Let's do Bo Hostler. I'm not in love with, but it works. 88 is Jaeger, who's fine. I would use Straka in this. Like, you're looking at a pretty damn unique lineup here, especially if you're going all the way down to the 5s for Sam Ryder. Adam Shank's going to be very, very unique, who rates out very, very well, just thanks to all the accuracy and short game that is in here. The irons are fine, the putting's fine. 5th in these short par 5s. Greens, when it's difficult, he hits plenty of them. So I really like Shank with that. So there's a look at a possible Rory lineup, but it's not my go-to this week. My go-to, like I said, has been Fitz. I don't care. Even if he is popular, I'm going to Eric Cole. I could go to Sam Ryder on this. Don't have to by any means. Again, Billy is fine. Dietrich could be interesting. I've been going to Carson Young because I've been getting a lot of uniqueness with Fitzpatrick off of it. 7,600 is a little bit tougher to navigate. Probably not able to go to like a Taylor Pendrith. Maybe I could. Definitely can't do like a Sepp Straka or a Bo Hostler or anything like that. Might be able to do a Taylor Pendrith, but I'll just throw in Billy with this. There's a Billy. If I do Sepp Straka, who I'm, again, very high on, what's that leave me with? 72? That's Adam Schenk, who would fit. Throw in Glover in this. A little bit more common of a lineup just because I'm using Sepp Straka here. But if we wanted to get off of that, we could try to get real greedy. Go like Fitzpatrick, Cole, Lowry. We'd have to drop down into the Sam Ryder for it. Billy. And then 73. Taylor Montgomery, I don't necessarily love. Rio, maybe. But again, it's that Adam Schenk, Lucas Glover. Dietrich might even work. But again, I'll throw... this one's already at 10%. I'll throw Schenk into it. But those are the kind of lineups I've been doing. Fitzpatrick and Cole. Fitzpatrick and, maybe a Russell Henley, Fitzpatrick and Sung Jae. Absolutely would fit into this. I've just been getting greedy. So my answer to the question that I posed to chat, I'm absolutely going into the 5Ks this week. Love Sam Ryder. Might be one other player that I look at, but it's mainly Sam Ryder. All right. If you want to look at parlays here, Tony, Eric Cole, it's only one time, so I wouldn't... Everything lines up really well for him, but, there's always... I really like Lowry. Berger, maybe. I really like Straka. So Lowry and Straka, who you've listed there. Again, I'm extremely high on Fitzpatrick, although I don't know what his odds would be for it. But combining this in a parlay, it's gonna help you out. Hey, good evening, Jeff. Thanks for jumping into chat. Glad you enjoyed the show. Took something from it. Love being able to share what I see. Even though we've went a little bit long on time, I'm always here to answer whatever questions people have. But yeah, thanks for watching. Much appreciated. And thanks for jumping in chat. So yeah, don't forget about Kirk either. Kirk's played really, really well here. I think I would go Lowry, Straka. I don't hate Straka at 2-1. Kirk almost 2-1 seems interesting as well. I like Hindley the player. I don't like those odds by any means. Plus 125. I think with those, I'd go Lowry, Straka, Kirk. Again, it depends on if you want to get, like a, quote, safer one. Maybe that doesn't pay out as much, or if you want to maybe try to hit more of a home run, like Pendrith at 3-1 is kind of interesting. Hodges at plus 360. Hodges has played extremely well here in his 2 or 3 times he's played. Lee Hodges. Oh, where is he? He's played extremely well here. Yeah. 20.125. Extremely good. Now, he didn't rate out well for me, but the good drives game. The greens, when it's difficult. Like, there's a lot. You got something to go on there with Lee Hodges. He just didn't grade out well. That could be interesting if you're trying to hit more of like a home run. But we've been going on quite a bit. I don't know how much longer my voice is gonna hold. So I'm gonna have to unfortunately call the show or end it there. But I will say that my one and done for this week is Shane Lowry. Much like what I said with Cameron Champ last week, we know that Shane Lowry has played well here in the recent past. He generally likes Florida. And I don't envision a place where I want to use Shane Lowry other than maybe the Open Championship. That's so far down the road, we don't know what his form is going to be. So, even though he's not in exactly the best form now, I'm going to use Shane Lowry. I'm just confident that he's going to play well as he typically does here at PGA National. But I want to thank Tony and Jay, P, Darnell, Jeff, all of you for joining in the chat. Really appreciate all the interaction, especially with the poll question. But appreciate all the viewership. Love what I do. Taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. So thanks to you 5 for jumping in chat. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel. It's always appreciated. Again, quick reminder, just because I'm thinking of it, next week is a double tournament week. We have the Arnold Palmer and the Puerto Rico. So not only will we have a show Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday for the Arnold Palmer, we're going to have the Puerto Rico Open full show. Yeah, DFS, data, and research all in one show for the Puerto Rico Open. That'll be Tuesday night at 9 p.m. So we have a full week of shows next week for calls, and the double tournament week. Thanks again for all the support. Really appreciate it. For all of the wagers you have made this week for the Cognizant Classic, for all of the DFS contests you play this week for the Cognizant Classic, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.